Thulasizwe Simelane, who was in that briefing. What was it like, Thulas? What was the atmosphere like in that room?
Well, Jeremy, it's state versus Zuma. It's game on. Shaun Abrahams coming in and basically outlining the process that led to the decision that he has made regarding the prosecution of the former President Jacob Zuma. It felt a bit like the previous media briefings that we have had from this room. If you remember the time when there were announcements being made around people such as Pravin Gordhan and others, it sort of had that tone of Shaun Abrahams reading and sort of going through the background that led to the decision that he has made. But ultimately it came down to a decision that says the representations that were made by former President Jacob Zuma have not been successful. And interestingly, it gave us a glimpse into some of the former president's argument around these matters now, because of course this is an old matter. We've sort of had glimpses at various points throughout the decade and a half that this issue has been pending, but we sort of now know his thinking at the moment. Shaun Abrahams, for instance, citing that former President Zuma denies the allegations against him, and also that he feels that there's been manipulation of the prosecution process and inexplicable delays also thrown into the mix in those representations that were made by the former president. But Shaun Abrahams coming to the conclusion on the advice of the panel that he assembled, which included, interestingly, Billy Downer, who of course led the prosecution of Schabir Shaik, but also was a lead prosecutor in the Zuma matter when it first started in 2005. And based on that, and also part of that panel was the Director of Public Prosecutions in KwaZulu-Natal. Based on that, Shaun Abrahams saying that the representations have not been successful, and the charges, basically the decision to charge Jacob Zuma that was made in November 2007 stands.
What we don't know, of course, Thulasizwe, as Ulrich Rue was pointing out to us, are what the immediate timelines are.
Yes, absolutely. That's a task that falls on the shoulders of the Director of Public Prosecutions in KwaZulu-Natal to basically arrange a convenient time for Jacob Zuma and others to appear before the courts in that province. And when we say the others, I mean it's the company called Tint, which at various points went by the name of Thompson, CSF, and some of its divisions. We can expect that they will be represented by their local representative. That's if they still have a local representative. Back then, they were represented by someone called Pierre Moinoy, who was their representative in South Africa. But interestingly, Jeremy, I mean, it was always going to play out in this way. If you know anything about this matter, is that it's never straightforward. It never follows a straight line. Already, there's, according to Shaun Abrahams, there's already been papers that have been filed in the Western Cape High Court by an organization that is basically calling for a permanent stay of prosecution of Jacob Zuma. So that's an interesting element already, even before we walk through the door of any courtroom, before we're even introduced to any judge. And certainly you can expect that this is the path it will follow, even if and when it gets to the point at which we will be going to presumably Pietermaritzburg High Court.